What happened here? I've been working with this standard for so many years. Now they've done a revision and suddenly it's all this weird stuff in there. Don't let the steering wheel be snatched out of your hands. Take advantage of the opportunities you have to help shape your sector.
Human beings are not ants. Unlike our tiny friends, we don't naturally know how to live together in large groups. This is why we need rules. And besides political rules, we also have technical rules, also known as standardization. It's actually one of our democratic rights to contribute to shape these rules. In this podcast, I will not tell you what you really should know about standardization. Because Amelie Leibrand will.
Hello and welcome back to our little podcast, Human Beings Are Not Ants, what you never wanted to know about standardization, but definitely should know. My name is Amelie and I'm so happy to have you with me here again today. In the last episode, we covered all the different ways to apply a standard and the special information that can be found in the National Forward. In this context, I mentioned the word Secretariat. This topic belongs in the large category of using standardization strategically. That's definitely worth its very own episode. I told you a bit about it in the very first episode of this podcast series, and today I'd like to shed some more light on this topic. In order to make the full implications of this clear, I need to elaborate a little, specifically with the question of how European or international standards work is structured or organized. To make it easier to understand, I will explain this using the example of international standardization, but the principles apply to European standardization in exactly the same way. So here we go. First, a reminder. ISO and CEN are not places, but rather associations of national organizations. They are umbrella associations. DIN is the German member of CEN and ISO. The actual standardization work does not take place at ISO in an extra ISO committee, but at ISO level in the various national committees. Of course, the different countries have different levels of interest in the standardization work, depending on the topic. This can often tell you how strong a technology sector is in a particular country. For example, a country that has no screw production is unlikely to participate in the standardization of screws. Keep in mind that not all 165 ISO member organizations have to actively participate in each standardization project. You only need at least 5 for a standardization project to take place at the ISO level. Let's assume we have a standardization project at the ISO level and let's say 15 countries are actively participating in it. This means that there is a technical committee in each of the 15 national standards organizations that mirrors this work, the so-called mirror committees. In order to oversee the individual contributions and coordination, there is one lead committee, or the Secretariat. Everything is brought together at the Secretariat. This is where the various threads are held and coordinated. When inquiries come in about what standardization looks like in this or that area, when other standards proposals are submitted in the same area, when the individual national mirror committees submit their contributions, when votes have to be taken and so on, it always goes across the desk of the standards body that holds the Secretariat. This is a lot of coordination work. But above all, it gives that body an enormous information advantage. The respective international colleague decides together with their respective chairperson how to deal with the individual contributions. This also applies internationally. The standardization organization is the process, the content up to the experts. That's why, in addition to the coordination of processes, there is always also the coordination of content in the form of leaders called chairpersons. Everything that is submitted has to be read, understood, evaluated, and processed. It's part of the Secretariat's job to not just blindly distribute everything to everyone. The experts also have normal jobs in their everyday lives, and standardization usually goes on top of all that. You don't want to spam them with stuff constantly. In addition to this information coordination, it's not uncommon for the Secretariat body to also be the body that drives the work forward. That is, where the relevant content is often prepared. Sometimes the other participating bodies limit themselves to commenting on the proposals or even just giving their nod of approval. On the one hand, this is all a ton of work, and it also obviously has to be financed. You have to want to pay for that. You may not always like or be able to afford the associated costs. Quick reminder, DIN is a non-profit association, which means we are there for all of you, but we are not a charity. We have to charge fees for our services. You have to weigh all the pros and cons for sure. But that said, it's an enormous advantage for a country's industry to hold the Secretariat of the standards body, to be the hub of information, to drive forward the technical specifications in your own sector, to know what's going on all over the world at the moment, and to steer the direction things should go in the future. This is really a big deal. And others have realized this too. Short review. Up until now, the US and Germany have been trading the leads as far as the number of ISO secretariats for years. Both are at around 16 to 17%. Sometimes one has a bit more, sometimes the other. This means that these two countries have traditionally set the tone globally, so to speak. But recently, China has decided to catch up. By 2030, China wants to be the lead in terms of holding ISO secretariats. In the last 10 years alone, they have more than doubled their number of secretariats. Let me translate. China has had enough of being told what to do, and now they are turning the tables. How are they doing this? Are they taking our secretariats? Well, yes, they are doing that too, but not primarily. They are not that interested in our topics. The secretariats for fasteners with metric external thread, corrugated fiberboard test methods, or high-pressure controls, they are happy to let us keep these. Don't get me wrong, these are all really important topics, and I want to be able to count on the fact that everything works properly in these areas. But they are more traditional topics. China is trying to get a massive foothold in such topics as digital twin, IoT, or RFID applications. And they have kind of a dual strategy. At the same time, they are no longer adopting international standards as eagerly as they did a short time ago. This means they are not only initiating their own things, but they are actively saying no to existing proposals. And if you now think, DIN is scared of losing relevance, but why should I care about that? Well, then you misunderstood the point I was trying to make. It's not about us. DIN could live just fine from translating Chinese documents into German. It's about all of you. We are here for you, and we are seeing a development here that hardly anyone else can, because so few people really have standardization on their radar. Therefore, before you can no longer sell your products around the world because you forgot to help shape standardization in your field, and now China has done it, and due to a lack of other options, the Chinese proposal also made it straight to ISO. Before you can no longer put your research results into practice, because your technology is great, but the system in your field has unfortunately become established and does not correspond with your approach. And before you think, what happened here? I've been working with this standard for so many years. Now they've done a revision and suddenly it's all this weird stuff in there. Don't let the steering wheel be snatched out of your hands. Take advantage of the opportunities you have to help shape your sector. Standardization is there for you. Yes, it's true. Without you, we can't do anything, really. DIN doesn't bite, you know. Try us. The content comes from you. We would love to hear from you. In episode 3, where I covered the standards committees, I told you how to find the perfect contact person at DIN. Listen again if you need a little refresher. Or feel free to get in touch over LinkedIn. Please contact us anytime. You're cordially invited. And on that note, until next time, take care and stay curious.